The U.S. men's national team has what is likely the most talented generation we have ever had, with plenty of players also coming into the 2026 World Cup during their prime with World Cup experience while playing at home. It almost sounds like the perfect storm for something special to happen. And today we're going to be talking about that with Geoff Cameron, the former U.S. men's national team player. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Filippo, and welcome to episode 3 of this 3-episode mini-series with Geoff Cameron. So part 1 that was already released by the time you're watching this was heavily focused in the 2014 cycle, the U.S. men's national team players heading abroad, and Jurgen Klinsmann. Part 2, we talked about the 2018 cycle when the United States failed to qualify to the World Cup. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the current generation, Gregg Berhalter, and much more. So as I always say, drop a like. It's a great way to help the channel. It's free, and free is good. Right? Okay, let's bring in Geoff Cameron.
Oh wait, how could I forget about today's sponsor?
And thank you once again, BetterHelp, for sponsoring Tactical Manager TV. Look, listen, you might be dealing with depression, anxiety, or you just need someone to talk to. So therapy can be one way to help. And for that reason, we are partnering once again with BetterHelp. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible. And this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be extremely hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. But when it's online, you can get a therapist from anywhere in the country, sometimes even anywhere in the world. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it is online. It's remote. And by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist as little as in a few days. And if the therapist that they match you with is not the right fit for you, they will replace him or her for another therapist with no additional cost. You may sign up and register now with the link that I placed on the description of this video, which is betterhelp.com/tacticalmanagertv. That is betterhelp.com/tacticalmanagertv. Yes, we used Tactical Manager TV. That link will also give you 10% off on your first month, and in the process, you'll be helping the channel avoid bankruptcy. So once again, thank you, BetterHelp. All right, everyone, part 3. We've been recording for a long time here already with Geoff Cameron. It's been a great conversation. We kind of lost track of time.
Talk.
Yes. It seems like we should have you every year for like 2 hours here, every single year. Make it a thing. But Geoff, one thing here to ask you now. We're going to talk about the current generation, the 2022 World Cup, now 2026 that's coming up. And we're going to speed through this one. I don't know how much you want to talk about this. I wanted to about Gregg Berhalter before we start. In regards to his rehiring, I'm not going to ask you if you're for or against it. I'm just going to ask, do you have any concerns? And is there anything that you think's like, you know what, there could be a positive here, at least, I guess, like continuing a project? What are your overall thoughts on that? Then let's dive into the Copa America and the World Cup.
So I would say that, whether people agree with disagree with the hiring of Gregg and whatever, I think it is what it is now, and we have to get on with it. And we just really got to put our positive vibes out. Do we have a talented squad? 100%. Do we have the experience now of going through a World Cup cycle and playing in some big games? 100%. Now, do we have players playing in the top leagues in the world? Yes. And we have a good amount of those players. I would say the only thing I was disappointed in is when the downtime between not having a manager and then having a manager, and you have this Gold Cup cycle that just happened, and BJ did a fantastic job. But if I'm a player in that aspect, I would find it really tough because, like, let's just say if I'm a player, who am I playing for, essentially? Am I showcasing my ability for the current manager, knowing that Gregg is hired already and he's just kind of overlooking? But what about the new guys coming in? Do they get that real sense of, like, they can show their style, their professionalism, and how they carry themselves on and off the field, like visually for the manager, or is it through a word of mouth from another manager and they might have a different bias or whatever. So I think that's the only downside of the not making the decision early enough, and maybe whatever, whoever they were interviewing or whatever. But if you kind of knew a little bit, then you should have, why wasn't he there in the Gold Cup to help and give these guys something to show for, essentially? And they showed, but like you want to be able to showcase yourself.
They showed in the Nations League, right? Nations League. Gold Cup, Gold Cup was the one we lost. Nations League we won. Gold Cup we lost.
No, but then that group leaves, a new group comes in, and now they're trying to show themselves for the A squad, right? Essentially. Mm-hmm. But who are they showing the A squad for? And that's where like the announcement already came right before the Gold Cup. Okay, why?
The entire process was weird, for sure, right? You don't have a coach for 6 months and the same guy comes back. And when he comes back, you're like, why doesn't he just take over then for that? He already knew the group. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think it's just the lost time. I think Clint said it best. He said, just why? Like, there was that 6 months, kind of like 6 months of like a missed opportunity, right? For players to show their ability, their growth and whatever. But it is what it is. Yeah. And like U.S. Soccer has their reasons, and I'm sure it's all fine. And there were some other things that we probably don't know about or whatever. But
yeah, because even the investigation was done in March, so they could have brought him for the Nations League. Like I guess Clint Dempsey did say that on TV too. But Geoff, one thing from a player perspective, I know you already talked in a segment that you never talked to Gio, and I asked this to Herculez Gomez too. You might have seen it in the episode. From a player's perspective, do you think between Gregg and Gio, everything will be fine? They'll talk it out and they'll figure it out? Because obviously Gregg and John Brooks, it didn't really go well, and we know that. But for Gio and Gregg, if you had not really bet money because we're not gambling here, but especially because I'm not trying to get in trouble here with you two. Yeah. But if you had to say right now, it's like, if you had to say right now, you're like, will Gregg and Gio have issues in the future? You think, no, there's going to be professionalism there from what you've heard and from what you know from these guys, both of them?
There should be. I know there was a question asked in the beginning, and there was a comment that said that they haven't spoken yet, but I think that would be one of the first things to do, is to have that conversation and hash it out and say, okay, like, sorry for making this like a big issue and like making it a public scene, and it should have stayed in the dressing room and XYZ. That's it. Now time to move on. What's best for the team? What's best for the country? Yeah, we want our best players playing, and we need everybody to be on the same page. And it's time to turn that page and forget about the past and move on. And we have an opportunity to do something great here in the U.S., and it's our home soil, and we need to have the best Gio and the best Gregg Berhalter possibly to have any chance of winning the World Cup. So let's fucking do it, right? Like that's just, it's got to be the mindset for that, and even for all the players. I think it comes down to Gregg and what he thinks, and his mindset and everything. But I think he's just, me personally, if I was talking to him, I'd say you got to give every player a fair chance, essentially. And maybe it's worth going back and having those conversations with players that were left off for the last roster, or, just maybe give the player a little bit more insight, right? Maybe why they weren't chosen or whatever, just to start develop that relationship back, because you never know who you're going to need. And when it comes down to that point of, when it's time to make a roster, and you want to have all your weapons available for you.
Mm-hmm. And also to keep the group united, right? You don't want to divide it. And clearly the players all get along. They were here in Orlando, and I saw them, even Gio, all of them. I saw them personally here in the hotel that they were. they all looked very close. All of them, Gio, Pulisic, all these guys looked fine. Unlike speculation that people were saying that everyone hated Gio, that seemed like a load of crap. Geoff,
Agreed.
you played in the 2016 Copa America, the Centenario in the United States. The United States makes it to the semifinal. Then, unfortunately, we have to face the guy we talked about in another segment, Lionel Messi, which is never good to face him. It's great to play with him, not against him. We get knocked out in the semifinals, but the United States still made it to the semifinals. And that was a team that later on didn't qualify to the World Cup. So my question to you is this. We now are coming into the Copa America in 2024 with a very talented squad, with World Cup experience now that you talked about how important that was to get a lot of these players involved. What should be the expectation? Do you think – I made this take that I said that and I know a lot of CONMEBOL. I watch a lot of CONMEBOL, Brazil, Argentina, everything there. And I said it's not too crazy to say the U.S. has a slight chance of actually winning the Copa America. And the reason I gave to that was, one, we're playing at home, and clearly we're better at home. Two, I think this is an actual talented team. And three, as long as we get lucky and we don't play Brazil and Argentina, all other games are not really upsets. These are teams that we can play toe-to-toe. Brazil and Argentina, sure, we would have to pull an upset.
They're the favorites,
and if it's
right?
one upset is fine. If you have to pull two, that's tough. But even Uruguay, they're better than us on paper, but I don't think the U.S. beating Uruguay would be an upset at home. It would be, okay, it can happen. So if we avoid Brazil and Argentina, they face each other early or one of them falls early, we essentially would need one upset to win it at home. I said it's not too crazy to think about.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, to go through that, like Copa America in the States and experiencing that, and then you going against Argentina, and you look back and you go, a lot of those guys that came onto that group, it was like kind of an opportunity. Jurgen gave some guys an opportunity to play against in that Copa America to give them more experience. And it was kind of the first time they were playing against world-class players. And at the time, it was Mascherano, Messi. And it was just like this link of, I mean, every player on Argentina was ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. But it was like the fear of giving them too much respect. And if you give them too much respect, then you allow them to do whatever they want, right?
They'll disrespect you.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't be fearful. And I think that's the one thing that we had a little bit, like, it was like a mixture. Some players were a little bit fearful. Some players were like, let's get stuck in, and it was like a little bit. Now we have this group. Who are they fearful of? They went toe-to-toe with England. They went toe-to-toe with other teams. Like, they have the ability, they have the confidence, they're young with now experience, more experience. We have ballers all around the pitch. I'm like, this is our opportunity. Yeah, you got to win a World Cup, you got to beat the best teams. Well, who are the best teams in the world? Well, the likes of Brazil, likes of Argentina. So you're going to have to face them eventually. It'll give us a little bit of a taste to what we're going to see in the World Cup, and there you go. Like,
so what would you say is your bare minimum expectation? You're like, okay, if we make it this
far, get out of our group for sure.
Get out of our semifinals, because then it's group, quarterfinals, semifinals is the bare minimum, same as 2016.
I would like to think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you end up like coming against Brazil or Argentina in the semifinals, you're like, yeah, all right, it could be a 60-40 game, percentage wise. Shit, might be 50-50. US they might piss through the group. Also, they're flying. Argentina might struggle or Brazil might struggle. Who knows? We don't know the situation. Different teams might bring in different players. We don't know. But yeah, like the ability that we have, if we bring in our group of players, yeah, I think, shit, if we made it to where we did, they can definitely do maybe better.
That's what I'm thinking too. Semifinal, and if the stars align, possibly fight for that trophy, which would be something special, something else, because it's a tournament with Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, some historical
Yeah.
soccer nations. Right there, you combine those countries, you have what, 3, 5 plus 2. You have 10 World Cups won right there, 10. When you
And then that
combine those.
just gives us more confidence going in. Boom.
Lastly, to let you go, because we've been recording for way too long, 2026 World Cup. And I know that's way too far, much further than the Copa America, and probably impossible to project, because we don't even know the format yet of the 48 nations. We don't even know the exact format. They keep
Crazy.
changing it. But for you, let's assume the World Cup is the same format as before, even though it won't be, right? Round of 16, quarterfinals, semifinal, final, group stage. What is now what you, I know the mentality, you talked about it. The mentality has to be the players have to believe they can win. That's the mentality. Win the World Cup. Whether it's realistic or not, doesn't matter. That has to be the mentality. But what would you say is your bare minimum to say, okay, we had a successful World Cup? Do we need to have like a Cinderella story of making it to the semifinals like Morocco? Would a quarterfinal already be, okay, this was successful? Round of 16 again? I hope not. But what would you
I
say?
mean, I think you always need a little bit of luck, and you need a little bit of a Cinderella story, right? I think this World Cup, I'm really happy that we did well, and we had experience in the last World Cup, and we've seen what this group can do, and with all these other players doing really well in their own teams and coming together, I think we could do something special. But at the same time, they are about to experience something that no one can really imagine. And I mean in the sense of, people really need to realize, England playing in England, right? The pressure and the standard that these guys play at every single weekend, the media, and like, they do anything, boom, social media, like, it's crazy, right? In the sense of, they have a bad game, all of the newspaper, the fans, it's like the fans and educated fan base, right? The football has just been, it's what they live. There's no other sports really. It's just football there, right? And the pressure that's mounted on these England players consistently all the time. We're about to get that times 10 now, because one, we're in the States, we're hosting it. Now we have this expectation of all our players playing at these big clubs, big names, big experience, right? Coming together. We're expected to win now. We're expected to do well. So everything's just going to be heightened. And I think we have big shoulders, and I think we can handle it. I believe we can handle it. But there's difference when pressure builds. And I think it's going to be something that we've never seen before.
Are you
And
concerned that could maybe make the players crumble?
I'm not concerned about the crumbling part. I'm concerned about the distractions, right? Of being able to block out everything else and just focus on that, like your job, what you're there for the team, and that's it, right? Like, sponsors and people are going to be throwing themselves at you. Like, you're in the States, you're in the World Cup, like, it's going to be the biggest market, right, ever. Mm-hmm. So think about all these other things coming into play, and it's just going to be on a different level than what we've all been a witness to watching. And, Brazil World Cup, like, what could get better than that, right? Brazil, like, it would have been.
The players crumbled in Brazil. The Brazilians
What I'm
crumbled.
saying, like, right? Like, the Brazil hosting the World Cup, they're expected to win. They have a talented group. All the pressure's on them, right? It's kind of be the same thing, essentially. Are we expected to win the World Cup?
No.
I don't know.
But to perform well.
We are to be, exactly, to perform well. But I think if we have the right mentality, and we have the right discipline, and we do all the right things, and like, everybody buys into that mentality, forget everything else outside the pitch, just focus on inside, and no distractions, nothing, I think there's a really good possibility.
So what's your
And
bold prediction? Quarterfinals, semifinals, or even crazier than that?
dude, I honestly, like, I remember as a kid, I want them to inspire kids, just like I was inspired when in the 1994 World Cup. And I was a kid from Attleboro, Mass, but I went to the Foxborough Stadium and I got to watch a World Cup game, and it changed my mentality. Like, I was a kid, I wanted to play professional soccer, and it gave me and I already had the buzz before, but it just gave me more of like fire in my belly.
Well, it
I
gave you a
want
dream, right? The dream actually, like,
100%.
yeah.
I want them to inspire all the other kids, that I was, that Christian. Give these kids another dream. Like, give them something to relate to and an opportunity to see something so special that in 15, 20 years now, like later, they're playing in a World Cup and they're in that moment. And I think that's like the biggest movement US soccer can do, is by inspiring all these players, and male and female, of a dream. Give them a dream. And people won't be saying, hey, I'm going to go play basketball. I'm going to go play soccer. I'm going to go play this instead of that. And, my expectations, I want them to win the World Cup. I believe, we need some luck and we need some good refs, right? But I
lot of
definitely
help.
do think it's possible. Do I think it's hard? 100%. But I think a minimum, quarterfinals.
Yeah,
And then
I agree with that.
anything's possible. Once you make it out of the group stage, and depending on the format, once you make it out of the group stage, anything's possible.
I'm going to say also minimum quarterfinals, even though I would maybe be a bit disappointed. But then again, it depends on who you face in the quarterfinals, right? You can go ahead and face a top team of France and Argentina, Brazil. But semifinals would already be very good. Winning the World Cup, as much as I want to believe it, I haven't been able to convince myself for 2026.
See, that's where you got to change it, man. Change your mentality. You believe we can achieve. That's it. You start sensing that. You push that positive vibes, man.
I'm not going to lie. Gregg Berhalter coming back kind of brought me a bit down. I was expecting us to get a big-time coach.
Too.
But
in a sense, I was like, listen, I respect Gregg Berhalter. I respect U.S. soccer and everything. But I was like, all right, who are we going to get? Like,
I thought it was a big name. I was
Zidane.
hoping.
We're going to get, like, hey, Pep's contract running out. Like, let's throw everything at the table. Let's get Pep in and bum, bum, bum. Like, I don't know. But, okay, now it's I believe in Gregg. He has this group. He has this experience with players. I just hope everything else is cleaned up from the last, and now we keep on pushing and we going. We have time now, and let's get back the time that we lost and really start, mending the things and the experiences that players dealt with before, and coaching staff, and get everybody on board. And I think anything's possible.
All right, Geoff, thank you very much. You stayed here for the 3 episodes for a long time. It was great. It was a great conversation. We even went off track at times and talked about just random soccer topics. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here.
Pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. Drop a like before you go. Geoff Cameron, thank you once again.